Hello and welcome to Just Keep Writing,
a podcast for writers
by writers
to keep you writing.
I'm Marshall.
I'm Nick.
And I'm LP.
And I'm Will.
Today we're going to be speaking with Victor Manibo. He's going to be the first person that we speak to for our Pride edition. We're going to be going for 4 weeks instead of fortnightly. And we're going to start off talking to Victor about his runaway success. Is it a runaway success? I think it's a runaway success. Like, I thought it was a slam dunk. The Sleepless, which I literally just finished about 30 minutes ago. But fucking loved. Welcome, Victor.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for such effusive compliments. I'm really floored, and I'm happy you finished it and that you enjoyed it. Hello everyone.
You also announced your next book today.
Yeah, coincidentally, today was the announcement for my upcoming book in the spring. It's called Escape Velocity. It's also from Erewhon Books. And it's a sci-fi thriller set in space at a high school reunion. So it's kind of like The Sleepless in that it has a mystery element and a thriller element, near future, but also deals with some of the capitalism issues and social inequality issues that I touched on in The Sleepless.
Nice. So we're gonna mark our calendars for what's the release date for that?
It's April 23rd, 2024.
Okay, so we'll make sure we get you on sometime in April of next year so we can talk about Escape Velocity as well, right? Thank you. Okay.
I would love to be on again.
You're locked in. And just so people are listening, the announcement was today, but people are hearing this in June. So,
Yes.
So now you have time to read The Sleepless and then prepare for Escape Velocity.
That's kind of my point. Yes.
It's the whole thing. All right, so Victor, give us your elevator pitch for The Sleepless.
Okay, The Sleepless is a near-future sci-fi mystery thriller set in a futuristic New York, about 20 years from now, where part of the world population does not require sleep. They have become sleepless because of a pandemic whose origins and whose general makeup is still largely unknown. The story begins 10 years into the pandemic, and so unlike the situation where we are now in the real world, they've come out of it and have established a new baseline normal life. We have a population of people who are sleepless due to the pandemic, and we have folks who have not been affected by the pandemic. And because we're 10 years from the initial outbreak, the world has changed to accommodate the different class of people basically created by this pandemic. So the story begins there and centers on our protagonist. His name is Jamie Vega. He is a journalist who is sleepless, and he gets embroiled in a murder mystery of his boss, who is basically a media magnate, owns a media conglomerate, and he wants to investigate what happened. And in doing that, he stumbles upon large conspiracies involving sleeplessness in general. And that's really what sets things in motion when his boss dies and he decides, okay, something's fishy about this death. Let's see what's going on here.
It's so cool. I can't even tell you. It's so...
Thank you.
I mean, so cool. Such a cool premise for a book. All right, LP, I don't want to tread on our first part of here. So
a lot of compliments are ready to start tossing out for this book. Yeah.
Well, we gotta get our formalities for our show out of the way. So LP, go.
Formalities for the show.
Sure.
I've never done the question part. Marshall, will you do this?
I will do this. Okay, so
I'll
Victor,
do it.
if you
I'm the one who does it, so
Oh,
I'll do
okay,
it.
all right.
I'm jumping in. Okay.
I'm
gonna
ready.
go
I'm not
ahead and
editing
do
this
it.
out either. People can know you just stepped right on me. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm the one who usually asks it. I felt like
Just
so
a heads up,
betrayed
Victor,
right now.
Will's also a Scorpio and has a takeover spirit. Just like I have.
The Scorpio jumped out. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So
Go ahead, Will. You got it.
Okay.
Screen
Thanks.
was off. Came back. Excuse me.
Exactly. All right, Victor. So we asked this question of all our guests, and
Sure.
we're just completely uncensored today. Also, Victor, we're just completely ourselves today. So it's like your family already.
I love that.
I want you to describe writing this book in 3 words, which can be completely unrelated. Whatever 3 words come to your mind right away.
Sure. Rushed is one. Eye-opening is another. And I guess like, oh God, I hate to say difficult, but it really was. So I guess that's it was rushed. It was difficult, but it was really eye-opening.
Amazing. So let's talk about the first word. Let's unpack those 3 words. So talk to us about rushed.
It was rushed because it was drafted during NaNoWriMo. With
Wow.
30 days, I had to come up with 50,000 words. I mean, 50,000 not so good words and not so good sentences, but that really contributed to. That's what I think about when I think about drafting this book. Was that experience? It was the first time that I had ever done it. It's the first time I ever drafted a book. I just thought it would be a nice challenge for myself to see if I could do it. I've always wanted to write, and I thought, okay, well, let's jump into the deep end and just do NaNoWriMo with basically no preparation. I just had like an idea, and it so occurred to me 2 days before NaNoWriMo, and I'm like, yeah, let's execute this. 30 days, 1,600 words. How hard could it be? Like, what does a banana cost? $10? So it was basically that. I was so out of touch with what that process entailed. And it was also November. There were the holidays, there were family and social obligations. So I met my goal, but I really had to rush. So that's why that's the first word that popped into my brain.
Now, you mentioned also difficult. So was it difficult? Yeah. I mean, unpack that first, because was it difficult because you felt rushed, or does difficult encompass some other aspect of it?
The difficult part comes a little bit later. The NaNoWriMo experience, even though it felt like I was running out of time, because there was like a 30-day deadline, which people can take as seriously as they want to, right? But I wanted to take it seriously. But that's not what made it difficult for me. I think when I said that adjective, it really referred to the after the revision process, because that I think was emotionally the most taxing for me. The hard work is always going to be there for any endeavor, and I'm used to hard work, but I wasn't really used to rejection. I wasn't used to uncertainty, insecurity. I wasn't used to a creative field at all. Like, my training is in the law, and I also went to business school. Those are, some people would say those are fairly regimented fields where expectations are very clear, career paths are clear. What you need to do to succeed can be fairly predictable or can be fairly mapped out. And when I was done drafting and revising the Sleepless and deciding to myself, okay, I do want this to be out in the world, I had to learn the business of writing and what a creative career would look like, or how to start that out. And I didn't really have a lot of resources in the beginning, and I was flailing, and that was really hard for me, that sense of uncertainty and just being lost, and to be honest, a sense of like maybe this was a mistake, or maybe this book was a waste, and the only person who would ever read it are my family and my friends. But I know I didn't want that, so I kept going. So that's where the difficulty really comes from.
It's interesting to hear that, you come from a career that like you do this, like you go to law school, you take the bar, and then like, you have this established career path, because mine's so opposite. Mine's always been creative. So I'm always like, what the hell's going to happen next? So I could imagine when you're used to structure like that, it is, also there's a lot of uncertainty, which when you were drafting it for NaNoWriMo, I can't talk today. Sorry, everyone's like I'm drunk. Was that equally as scary? Like you're like just going in, or was it more of like, because it's NaNoWriMo, there's all this energy that you were like, no, I'm going to do this?
With NaNoWriMo, it was not that difficult. It didn't feel high stakes to me because I was doing it for myself. It was a personal goal. I just wanted to see if I could do it. There were no stakes. If I failed, then okay, I failed. It's fine. It was something that I wanted to give a shot, and it was an idea that I like came up with a few days prior with no preparation. If I failed, like I kind of set myself up for failure, and so the difficulty there was just like meeting the word count. Emotionally, it was not difficult. If failure was something that I expected or was going to be comfortable accepting, and then after that, when I really decided I think I want to be a writer. I think I really want to take this seriously. And then I had goals and dreams and aspirations and people to look up to, and writers that I want to emulate, and careers that I wanted to emulate, and those kind of put like more pressure on me. And I wasn't doing it for myself anymore because I was going out there. I was making friends, professional contacts. I was sending my manuscript out to agents. So I was being vulnerable with this. So whereas with NaNoWriMo, it was just for me. So yeah, I think that's really where the difference was.
And what about eye-opening?
Eye-opening was because I think throughout writing this book, I realized what I valued, not just in the stories that I like to read and the stories that I like to write, but what I valued in life. I noticed that even though I had these ideas of, okay, I should be writing about this topic or these kinds of people or these kinds of plots or issues, my writing just gravitated towards certain things and the same kind of themes and the same kinds of characters, and I couldn't kind of avoid it, even though a part of me told me I should. For example, with the Sleepless, I was very hesitant to have essentially a cyberpunk book with with a Filipino protagonist who's also queer, and I was thinking, and perhaps unfairly, that oh, no one's gonna read this. The people who read sci-fi will not want a main character like this. Will not follow a character like this, and so there's that part of it that I was kind of thinking of writing against, but I couldn't help it. It's just like it just goes that way because that's who I am and that's what I want to write and those are the stories that I want to read, and so it was a journey of discovery, and I'm discovering as the more that I write that's what the endeavor is. I think writers write as a means of self-discovery. That's not the only reason why people write. That's not the only reason I write, but it's definitely part of the project. Writing is a means for me to examine who I am and how I see the world and how I see my place in it.
It's interesting that you said you were unsure if people would gravitate towards a queer character. Is that because you never saw yourself in science fiction before? Like, what made that thought go through your head?
There's definitely that. There was definitely the sense that I don't see a lot of queer characters in science fiction, especially in movies and TV. And I thought, okay, well, you know, I'm going to be frank. Jamie being bisexual, if I wrote this book now, he probably would be a lot queerer, a lot more adventurous in terms of the very little like sex and romance that is in the book. But it was the Jamie as a character as written is a product of what I was comfortable with in my work at the time that I was writing it. And this is going back to what I was saying about how the more I write, the more I am discovering, this is what I want to lean into. And so now, especially because I've decided this is a career I want, I've really delved into science fiction, fantasy, horror, stories, and books and movies and TV shows that aren't part of the mainstream so much, that are probably little known or probably underrated, people might say. And I'm finding, oh yeah, there are a lot of other types of stories that do have BIPOC protagonists, queer protagonists, and like unapologetic about it, and like it's all on the page. With the Sleepless, I did try to put it all on the page in terms of you get uh, queer relationships, you get a little bit of queer sex, you get queer dating, but it's not central to the story. I fixed that in the second book. The second book is very very queer, but yeah, that was a little meandering. But I hope I got my point across. That like I did discover that um, you know me not seeing representation when I was writing The Sleepless was also a product of me not going out there and reading more widely and consuming more widely.
I mean, I also think as queer people of like a certain generation, right? Like I feel like Gen Z is going to grow up with really a lot of reading queer fiction. Nick, you can ask this question next too. Okay, I didn't forget you. Um, I just think you sometimes can second guess yourself. You know what I mean? Like, should I do this? Can I do this? It's like you, again, just what you were saying, it's discovery. I feel like for me personally, being around Brent and LP and reading their work, it makes me want to dig in more to who I am than ever. Like, they make me feel more free, and I'm lucky that, I have people like that who make me feel that way. And then reading other writers who are queer makes me feel like I want to lean into more who I am. So I think it's important. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to ask this with the context that we just recorded another episode earlier this week around this subject. You said writers write as a means of self-discovery. One, may I quote you on that for social media?
Absolutely.
Perfect, because it's a perfect line and I really like it. I've always used the term you have to bleed on the page, right? You've put it much in a better statement and more eloquent than I could, and I love it. But what I want to know, like in that line, in that vein of discovery for you, that writers write as a means of self-discovery, where do you draw the line? Where do you like stop yourself from bleeding too much on the page, and how do you know what to put in to your stories? Because I absolutely love this book. I love your characters. It was such a fun read, and you took me on a journey. I was like, dude, this society's cool. Sleepless, all right. And then you're like murder, and I was like, oh, yes, like and then another twist, right? you had the queerness come in, and I was like, this is like the tone and the pace in which you set that up was wonderful. And you're mentioning like, this is kind of you. This is what you were comfortable with at the time. So, question, right? How do you know when to stop putting yourself on the page?
I think a lot of newer writers, and I still consider myself newer writers, and especially when I was writing this book, the problem isn't saying too much on the page, but not saying enough on the page. I think there's a lot of fear and uncertainty and insecurity, right? So that wasn't something that I was considering with the Sleepless. I wasn't considering that, oh, maybe I'm bleeding too much on the page. And but now, as I've kind of gone through the process of releasing a book, writing other books, and knowing who I am, and knowing what I kind of really want to write about more consistently, I find that I am talking about a lot of really deep stuff that perhaps other people would say, "Oh, okay, that's going too far," like you were saying. And my instinct is to just say, yeah, just lean into that. I think I think like editing yourself in terms of themes and in terms of instincts. I think that's counterintuitive to what, at least what I view as the writing process to be. Um, I'll give you an example with The Sleepless. As we were going through final edits on this book, I had a tragedy in my personal life that involved suicide. And, you know, this is not too much of a spoiler, but there is a suicide kind of plot line in the book. And it was kind of surreal going through that, and also having to write a story that had that, and having a character kind of processing that grief while I was processing that grief. And at that point I had the option or opportunity to either hold back, pull back, not just because of how I was feeling, but because at that moment I was aware of how those kinds of portrayals might make other people feel, right? So there was that instinct. But then the other side of me was, I can't help myself. This is where the emotion is taking me. This is where, I think if I stop this, I, I won't produce the best work, and people will be able to tell.
Right.
And the comfort level in terms of oversharing or over kind of um, having your characters mirror your life, or people around you, the lives of people around you. I think the comfort level on that differs from person to person, but I think there is a bigger risk of failing to do good art when you're holding back on that bleeding on the page rather than on bleeding too much. I think I would err on the side of, yeah, put it all out there. And if anything, hopefully your agent, your beta readers, your editors will rein you in, not just creatively, but also if they're good people who care about you, they will also sense that you need to be reined in for your emotional or mental health.
So, follow-up question. This is more of like your writing process, just the curiosity as we're talking about putting yourself on the page and things like that. What are you, a discovery writer, or are you an outliner, right? Where's the intentionality of putting yourself into the page? Where does that come into your process?
The intention, it differs for every book. With Sleepless, as you know, I basically pantsed that because of NaNoWriMo. But then I knew myself, and I knew that I had a more structured, regimented way of thinking. Also, depending on the genre that you're writing, that can be required, especially if you're writing, let's say, a really tightly plotted mystery, right? It's kind of hard to pants that. And I'm finding that that's what I really like to write. The next book is gonna have a mystery plot to it, and it's hard to pants that, and I didn't want to pants that. So for the second book, I did outline it, and the books that I wrote after that are also outlined, but they're not heavily outlined. I do, maybe there are 2 or 3 levels to my outline. Uh, an outline will have like maybe a 1 sentence or 2 sentence like bullet point on what the scene is going to be, and then the rest is kind of I'm discovering the scene. I'm discovering writing the scene, and that's really when the shit comes out, right? It's really when, oh, this is where character A meets character B for coffee, and then I thought it's just going to be like delivery of information, and then it turns out, oh, these people have issues that I want to talk about, and I didn't plan this, but this came out as I was like kind of just drafting. I had goals in mind, but sometimes it just comes out that this is when they hash out their 20-year-old beef that they haven't talked about because they're both so kind of scared to be vulnerable, for example. So it's a little bit of both. Yeah, I think I will always start with an outline just because of the type of genres that I write, but then I really like the exhilaration of an outline that is general enough that I can write an entire chapter without it being too on the rails.
LP, back to you.
I really identify with what you said about how much to leave on the page, and I think how much blood to leave on the page, right? Because I think in a lot of ways, and for a lot of years, science fiction and fantasy have been about adhering so sternly to the aesthetic, and even mimetic fiction for its own part, like being so in love with the craft and like what makes a thing clever, that folks forgot that there are people reading the thing, and that these people need to identify with a person in the story, right? Clearly not a problem I have with this book, but like I love the way you kept me from the very beginning. Like the mystery doesn't happen to like the 10% mark. Like you don't know where you are in it until then, but like you built the world so beautifully in like the first 30 minutes of this book. And I was hooked. I was ready. I knew I was in good hands. I was ready for whatever came next. And then when it turned out to be a mystery, I was fucking surprised. I was like, look what this bitch did to me. This rude bitch.
I love that. I love that.
Go ahead, Will.
Marshall, no, you go, Marshall, and then I'll go.
No,
I just wanted to put that up there.
I just got hung up on something earlier on that you said, and I just want to kind of go back just a little bit. So the Sleepless, I want to know how you came across NaNoWriMo, because it doesn't sound like you set out to be a writer. You had a different path going, and you're like, okay, did you hear about NaNoWriMo and then just be like, oh, that'd be cool to do? And then you did it, and you came up with this awesomeness that we're talking about. Like, I'm like, your path is like totally, different than a lot of us aspiring writers. I just think it's really interesting that this is what you came up with, and now you're on this other path. So, and you also have been talking about you've written other books. You have other books coming. So I think it's really interesting. I don't know if I have a question, but really my question is, was NaNoWriMo the inspiration, and were you consuming stories in a different way, and then you're like, oh, that'd be cool to do, and you came across NaNoWriMo? I'm just curious because I'm really jealous, obviously, as you could tell.
Well, I'm not ready to be jealous, but I really did read a lot, and I'm a fan of nerdery in general. I think I've always wanted to write, but I never really saw myself as a writer because, and this is where the Asian's going to come out, that's not a viable career path, as my parents have told me and inculcated in me. So there were times in undergrad that I tried writing short stories. I joined the literary magazine. and it was a hobby. And then I've heard of NaNoWriMo before. I tried to do it once. I want to say when I was in between jobs, probably in 2014, 2013, maybe, where again I was approaching it as like a hobby, not something I would take seriously, not something that other people would get to see. And especially because at the time when I heard about NaNoWriMo, I was already in America. I had moved here in 2007 as an adult, and I'm Filipino. I just had an idea of what publishing is like, or what literature is like, or what kind of books get published, and what kind of authors are on the shelves. So I never really saw myself as that. And then when 2017 came around and I had this story idea, it was really, yeah. The genesis was it was a really long weekend. I was super tired. I was coming from Jersey, hang out with my family the entire weekend because that's how Filipinos do. You can't just like get rid of your family, I guess. And I had a long week, and I'm like, oh God, I wish I didn't have to sleep because I have so many things to do to finish and all that. And this also, like, again, around the holidays, I knew that work was probably going to slow down, but all the other parts of my life is going to be like picking back up and going to be crazy. And so I was like, okay, well, if I didn't need to sleep, I can do all of that. And I'm like, yeah, but then like, oh, that's crazy. Like, do I really want that? And then the thought experiment, the what ifs, just spiraled and spiraled, right? And I'm like, I need to write this down. And it was really like, kind of curiosity, like, let's follow this thought process and not even let's make this into a story. But then the more I wrote it down in my notes app, it was like, oh, this could be a story. And then it was 2 days, like I said, maybe 2-3 days before NaNoWriMo, I was like, oh, okay, let's make this into a story. And this is also me being a little bit unhinged because I was already complaining that I was too busy, and I knew I was going to be busy. Let's put a project. A project that I thought would be easy, but still a project that I didn't have to do, and add that onto my plate.
Right.
But I think that speaks to how captivated I was with the idea and with the concepts that I wanted to kind of interrogate and explore. Business, I didn't let it stop me. I kind of was exhausted a lot, but that's how it happened.
Wow.
Such a fucking New Yorker.
Listen, did I not mention the Asian part? The whole lawyer thing, like that should tell you the type A personality.
The Asian part I understood because you're busy lawyering, 3 days with your family, not getting away. That part made perfect sense. It's the part about, hey, I'm not doing enough. Let me make it a side hustle.
Add one more thing to my plate.
Capricorn, so there's that.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
I'm going to read a section of the book, and it's early on. It's on, I think it's on page 15. Yeah, it's on 15. And this is from Jamie, and it's early on, and it goes, at some point in the past year, especially as the weather grew warmer, I felt the need to harness my extra time outdoors. At the turn of the spring, I started running. I used my freed up weekends to learn surfing and to train for dragon boat racing. I already have a blue belt in Taekwondo, and as soon as I find a 24-hour dojo. I'm doing karate next. I practice all types of yoga, from Ashtanga to Vinyasa. I fence, I box, and once in a while, I get roped into a late-night game of pickup basketball with other folks in the building. If for no other reason than this, I could never leave New York. So just with you writing that, as soon as I read that, I was like, I'm so into this book already because I am never leaving this city. And I do sleep.
and I wanted to write about New York, half because they keep telling you to write what you know, and it was easy, especially if you're pantsing something, to just pull from what's around you. But also, I really love this city. I have been here 15, 16 years. Most of my friends have come and gone because that's just how life is. But I never see myself leaving New York. I love it. It has its very, very serious problems. But it's such a beautiful, magical place.
Mhm.
I am writing about other places now. So there is that. I know that the Angelino in LP is protesting
Yeah, it's
from
okay. Let
the.
him protest, Victor. Okay, because
It's
New
so.
York City is the best.
I was at a party in New York over close to a holiday party in December, and like I was talking to someone about like just like because he was doing a lot, and like his partner, she was just like, I get it, you love Los Angeles. I was like, oh, you think that I think that Los Angeles is amazing? I don't. What I'm saying is balancing is important, right? Like, great. New Yorkers do feel like New York is the center of the universe. I don't think Angelinos think that, but that's a conversation for another episode.
Yeah, I mean, we could dive into the subject of how great New York is, like on 4 episodes, but we won't today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
ever.
like I said, it's got it's very real and very serious problems. It's perfect to me. I love it.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I don't think it's the center of the universe by any means, but I do know those people, and I'm like, you're embarrassing. This is why everybody else hates us. This is why everybody else feels comfortable saying things about New York and New Yorkers because
That's
of
awesome.
that kind of view. But it is what it is.
I'm fine with it. I'm saying it's the center of the universe. Whatever.
It's such a great thing that we're interviewing you. Moving on. Hey, Victor.
Yeah, let's talk about let's move on. Some of us don't live in New York, people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I know. Not everyone can handle it. I get it.
It was fun. I love visiting. Wow.
Not
That was
everyone wants
Wow.
that. It's
that felt
fine.
directed at me, but that's okay. Continue.
It wasn't. Relax, everyone. I'm fucking with you.
Don't hate New York. Anyway, so Victor, okay, we talked about like some of the genesis for the story. We've talked
Mhm.
about you just getting wild hair in your ass and deciding to write a book. Congratulations, that's great. Go ahead. Do you have a question, Will?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Always. Thank God.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I got questions for days. So Victor, when you were writing it, because it does have this noir type of mystery type of beats. What was that coming instinctively because you've internalized like a lot of mystery, or is it something that you like after reviewing it be like, okay, I need to create more of a mystery?
I think it's a little bit of both. I'm a huge mystery reader, mystery and thrillers. I love that genre. I think, yeah, what the first stories that I really kind of imprinted on are Sherlock Holmes stories. The first novels that I really liked were Agatha Christie novels. And I was reading them at an age when I should probably not be reading them. But those were the books that were around in my house that I grew up in. So what made me fall in love with stories are mystery stories. It's a puzzle. And as you're probably seeing now, I kind of have a little bit of a logical brain, or that's how my brain works. So that's why I enjoy these stories. When I was coming up with the Sleepless, it was like I was mentioning, it was not mystery at all. It was a thought experiment about how a human body can change and how a fundamental change in one person or in a group of people can then change how the world works. And that's science fiction. That's something that I also really enjoyed reading and watching growing up. But when I was conceptualizing the Sleepless, I was like, okay, well, there's this cool thought experiment, what if world, but that's not a story. That's not enough for a story to me. I needed a character, and he needed to do something. And the first thing that I thought was like, okay, he solves a murder and he has all this free time, so he can solve a murder. That's gonna be his new hobby, basically. So that's how it happened. It was my love of this genre, kind of gave me an idea of what the plot could be that happens in this world to this character.
It's interesting that you brought up Agatha Christie, because when she was writing mysteries, she never knew who did the killing. She actually gave everyone all these motivations, and then whatever came out. And I found that fascinating. So obviously you wrote this and you told us that you kind of just pantsed it. Now, for your book that's coming out, was it much more of a methodical type of thought process and about like crafting, if it is a mystery, like, if it has those mystery beats, or are you again kind of going like into it like, I'm not really sure what happens at the end, or like, tell me about that process?
So with the second book, it does have a mystery element to it. There is a murder that happens in the past timeline and another that happens in the present timeline. So I was like, you know what? Let's up the degree of difficulty here and have two mysteries in the second book. I don't know why I did that. I think like just with NaNoWriMo, it's also like me trying to challenge myself and set a goal for myself and see if I can do it. And so there are two mysteries, two timelines. And with that, I knew I couldn't pants it. I knew at that point that my instinct was not to pants a mystery at all, let alone two kind of subplots that have murder mystery elements. So it was definitely more methodical. I think the improvisation and the discovery writing, much of it came out in the characterizations and people's hang-ups and baggage and insecurities and their predilections and how they embody and how they um, kind of perform their queerness and their sexuality and their desires. It's a I want to say it's not really good marketing copy, but I feel like it's a very sexy book, and I didn't mean for it to be sexy, but that the sexy just came out, um, and that's not in the method. That's not in the outline. That was more just like, oh, wow, okay. Victor really wants to get horny in this book. Okay, I guess we're going horny this time. Great.
Horny queerness.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Erewhon books that you signed with. Because I feel like they're one of the publishers that are really like coming out with like amazing work, and doing so many good things. And they used to, I don't know if they've done it since the pandemic, but they used to have these little salon sessions where you could go and discuss books and have guests and everything. What has it been like to work, with your publisher and your editor, and, how's your experience been?
Erewhon's been great. I have very few complaints because it's publishing. It's not perfect. We are in an industry that has a lot of flaws, but I am floored by the talent and by the support that they've given me. My editor, Sarah Guan, is amazing. She really knows what I'm trying to do. Sometimes, even though like I'm unsure of what I'm trying to say, she's always able to pinpoint, like, I think this is what you're trying to do here. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. And the moments that I say that are so often, and it's just a testament to how her instincts are so sharp, and she really knows how to bring the best out of me as a writer, and other writers too that have worked with her at Erewhon say the same thing. The publicity team, I mean, it's a one-man team. Marty Cahill has done so many good things for this book, getting the word out, getting people to read it, getting people excited. Even again, it's been a few months since the book has been released, but there are still opportunities for me to talk about the book and talk to people, and he's the one who kind of gets that going. It's an indie publisher, it's a small publisher, but it has good taste. The books that they come out with are always so insightful and uh, a lot of the time very queer, and most of the time coming from underrepresented perspectives, from BIPOC people, from Black people, and I think they're doing amazing work. I'm very biased, but um, I'm just so grateful to be there. I'm happy to be working with them for my next book.
Go ahead, Marshall.
Yeah, so I was wondering, so we're going to run up against our last couple questions here pretty quick. But we've done a pretty good job, I think, in this episode of avoiding major spoilers. And I highly suggest everybody go out and read this book. But what do you want, since this is, and we've talked about how this book came to be, what do you want people to take away from this, and what should they expect from the rest of the series? Like, what are you excited about? Is it the same protagonist? Do you, what are your, I don't know, what are your goals and aspirations for the rest of the series?
Well, it's not going to be a series. The next book is a standalone.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. Yeah, the next book is a standalone, but I want readers to take away from the book the notion that how we value ourselves and our time might seem like something that we've figured out, that like, oh, I do this because I want to do this, but really that's not the case. There are a lot of demands that are pulling on us subconsciously, unconsciously, and consciously. And I hope that by reading the book, people can examine those pulls and those demands, whether they come from family or the romantic relationships that we have, or capitalism, or the need to pay bills. I think a kind of examination of one's relationship with time and how also that impacts one's idea of productivity and self-worth is something that I want readers to kind of pick up from the book. Jamie, our protagonist, does a lot of hobbies for fun, and there is kind of a sense that, especially in the culture that we have, when you have hobbies, it's not really, you're not optimizing it if you're not making money off of it, or if you're not getting some sort of, I don't know, fame, or if you can't parlay it into success in another way. And I feel like that really devalues the idea of hobbies and doing things for yourself and for fun. And I know it's kind of counterintuitive because I started out doing this as a hobby and now it's a career, but that is something that I too need to remind myself of. And I hope that this book kind of encourages that conversations in the people who read it.
I love that. Yeah, some of us have a lot of hobbies, and it doesn't, sometimes you can just do stuff for you, and other times it's like, I don't know, can I do something with this? And I love that message. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's okay if it's just for you. That's great.
Some of us have been podcasting for a long time, and it's just because we love it and it's fun.
Yeah.
I love it. So we're gonna get into our last. Does anybody else have any other questions before I get to the last one or two? I don't know if I can ask the last one. Should I ask? Can I do the last one?
Would you like to ask it? You may. I'll allow it. I'm kidding. You can. Totally.
You guys suck. Okay.
I know. I'm such a bitch.
Right.
Okay. I'm a bitch. That's fine.
All right. So I actually have two questions. The first one is a logistical one. Some people may not know your work. Where can people find you on social medias? Where should they buy your book? Any way that people can reach out to you or just follow you and see what you're up to next. Let us know. I'll put it in the show notes.
Against my better judgment, I'm still on Twitter at Victor Manibo. That's just my name. And I'm also at Victor Manibo on all other platforms, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on Substack also. Please subscribe, although lately I haven't been putting out newsletters because I'm on deadline. I also have a website, victormanibo.com. So if you just use my name and put an @ before it, you'll probably find me. Also on Mastodon, but that's still kind of like iffy. I still don't quite know how to navigate that one.
Perfect. So since I got the guys okay, I'm going to ask you the last question that we always ask our guests. What keeps you writing?
Ooh, wow. Okay, I think it's this need that I. It's almost like I feel pain if I don't. It's not healthy. I guess like when I say it that way, but it just feels like a pit in my stomach, a pull in my chest. If I'm like, I have a story and it just needs to be written, and if I can't, most of the time I can't because of demands of work and everything else. And it hurts. It like mentally and physically hurts. That keeps me writing. That's not the healthiest answer, but that's the first answer that comes to mind, and I think that's the realist. Like we were saying earlier, the instinct to filter sometimes is more harmful. So yeah.
We'll take it. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you coming by, and we got to have you on again for the next one for sure.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Y'all were not holding back. I love it.
No,
we never do.
We try not to.
It's not really our thing.
That's awesome.
No, not at all.
That's great. I would love to be back and hang out with you again.
And this has been Just Keep Writing, a podcast for writers, by writers, to keep you writing. You can find us at justkeepwriting.org. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Feel free to reach out to any of us on our social medias, and please jump in our Just Keep Writing Discord channel. Links to all of that is in the show notes. Lastly, please support our show by going to patreon.com/justkeepwriting. We offer daily writing prompts, early access to podcast episodes, and much more. Thanks for listening, and just keep writing.